Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me at the back of my police cruiser, it's Shahbaz. Hello, Shahbaz.
Wait, hold on. Am I under arrest?
You are under arrest. If you have to ask,
back of the police. What am I under arrest for, officer?
I can't tell you that. I cannot tell you that.
That's not right. That is
argue with
illegal.
Me.
How did I get here? Why did I accept?
Argue with me. Why don't you ask your partner in crime? Hello, Anthony. How
wait, I'm surprised he's like your partner.
I thought we were the two cops arresting him.
I thought you were the
cops. You wanted to be a cop? No. You are. I said you guys are in the back seat.
I know I'm a little tan.
Taking you down.
There's no way way that Daniel was able to arrest both of us. We would have killed him.
No, I got you both.
Yeah,
I got you both.
He probably shot us. That's no. I'm not gonna say
that's why.
I may have planted some evidence.
Shot us right in the foot.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. I needed to find a way to get us all here today, and the only thing I could think of was getting you both arrested. That's the only way we could be in the same spot together.
That's how it always goes.
Did I over plan this? Was there a path of least resistance I could have taken? Do you think?
I think you could have just asked us. Would you like to be arrested today? And we would have said no.
I mean,
or do you want to just come along with me to record this review? And I'm like, yeah, sure, totally. Yeah. That's what we do.
Okay, how about this? We're all going on a ride along together. We're taking in the sights. We're cruising through Beverly Hills.
Now they call it ride-alongs, right? When we're handcuffed in the back, Shay.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's what the man
I better
does.
not see your hands in this review right now. You keep them behind. I'm so delighted to be talking about Beverly Hills Cops with you all. This is a franchise that has long endured the test of time, and I didn't think we'd ever be back in this world again. But I think Jerry Bruckheimer is looking at some of the biggest franchises of his career, and it's amazing to see what we've gone the last few years with Top Gun coming back, with Bad Boys coming back, and now Eddie Murphy coming back as Axel Foley. Like, this is pretty incredible. Anthony, what was your history with the Beverly Hills Cop franchise? Was this a big one for you growing up?
Yes, because it is one of those films or franchises that came out before I was born, or during my years.
During your life.
During my life, but also when I was a little wee person who couldn't watch these films. So just like music from that time period or movies from that time period, you kind of you always gravitate to them. It's like, oh, this is what came out during my time period when I was born. But yeah, definitely Beverly Hills Cop. I don't remember 3 as much as I remember the first 2. But yeah, big action films for me. Action comedies. Like, they're really the forefront of action comedies when you think about it.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, and that's something that we'll talk about, obviously. But this is like, when you think of action comedies, like, this was one of these franchises that was leading the charge back in the early 80s and now all the way up until today. Shay, how about you? What was your history with this franchise?
I never really watched any of the movies. I mean, there were movies that were on in the house because the TV was probably playing them through different channels, but I never really sat down to properly watch them. So here and there, like while my family's watching, I'd watch a couple of minutes here or there, but it's never a franchise that I really spent time to watch. And no reason. I love Eddie Murphy. And I was always interested in it, but I just don't think I ever got around to it. But I knew enough about the franchise to not really get myself in trouble today.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Yeah, I mean, for me, well, you're in the backseat of a police cruiser, so obviously you're in trouble. But yeah, for me, these were big films for my dad. He loved these movies. So whenever they would be on TV growing up, that would be really the only way that I could watch them, because, they were censored. They were the TV edits, so you wouldn't be getting all the profanity and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, it's nice being back in this world. It feels so nostalgic to be talking about a movie like this, and I think it has very much the sensibilities of the franchise. It feels very much cut from the same cloth, but we're going to get into all of that, of course. This is the Movie Podcast. You can catch brand new episodes all throughout the week with new reviews, episodes, discussions, and all the latest movies and series. We have an incredible main episode out that you could catch right now, where we talk about AI in Hollywood. We talk about Dune 3. We talk about Nosferatu. We talk about a lot of stuff. It's a really fun episode, so make sure you go check that out on all podcast feeds right now. If you're listening to this, you're already in the right spot. So go check that out. If you like what we're doing, and if you want to follow us, check us out on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at The Movie Podcast. Everything you need to know is in the show notes below. So go check that out, including where to, find us on YouTube. And if you want to join us on Discord, let us know what you're watching. We have a bunch of spoiler rooms open up right now that you could go in and talk spoilers galore about whatever you are watching. This is a really big month. We have a lot of fun movies and a lot of fun events planned, so you don't want to miss anything. Stay here on the Movie Podcast. And if you have a couple bucks to toss our way, if you want to join us on Patreon, help us keep these lights and mics on, you could do so by joining our Patreon link. Check out our show notes below for all of that and more. Let's get right into it. Of course, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F releases exclusively on Netflix on July 3rd and is directed by Mark Molloy. This is his first debut film. He's worked a lot in the commercial world and is now joining the world of Beverly Hills Cop. This was also originally going to be directed by Dylan Bilal of obviously the Bad Boys films, but they dropped out to do Batgirl. That is a whole other story. That's a whole other episode of the Movie Podcast. But Mark did come step in, and now we are talking about this film, which is starring and returning Eddie Murphy to this, almost 4-decade-old franchise. We also have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Taylour Paige, and Kevin Bacon joining the fun. Shahbaz, start us off with your first reaction to Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F.
Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F is a lot of fun. It is really Eddie Murphy going back into a role, or back into the Eddie Murphy that I remember so well. It feels like it's been a while. I mean, the last, I think, new movie of his that I watched was Coming to America, and it wasn't a huge hit for me. I thought it was okay, had some good moments, but overall, not the Eddie Murphy that I loved and waited to see. This is just, he's having a lot of fun. This is a character that he just slips right back into, and everything about this movie feels really well made. There are some issues that I have with it when you talk about the length of the film and the overall third act of the movie, but it's a movie from a time period that we're no longer getting movies from nowadays. It's just that time period where really people just kind of embraced Hollywood filmmaking. It's a lot of fun. There's some great characters. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who has been kind of quiet recently as well, haven't been seeing him a lot, does a great job in it as well. Taylour Paige, who, again, last we saw in Zola, also fantastic. She does a great job. So there's a lot of great characters and a lot of great returning characters from the original films that really blend in well together. The film also looks really good as well. It has like this dirty, kind of grimy LA grunge look at certain points. It's very self-aware, so there's jokes that are being made that probably were jokes from the original film that they're like, we can't keep doing this kind of a joke anymore because we're running it to the ground. There's a lot of great stuff about this movie, and overall, I had a really, really good time watching it.
Yeah, it's funny to see a franchise, again, that has... The last time we got a film in this series was in 1994, which wasn't really a beloved movie when Beverly Hills Cop 3 came out. So now we are returning to this world, and I really like that we're dealing with the world where Axel obviously is still a cop, he's still a street cop, and it very much is... like Maverick, right? He's like, I don't want to go anywhere else. This is where I belong. I belong on the streets. And there's a line in the movie that even says, like, his captain's telling him they don't want swashbucklers, they want social workers, right? And it's very much like reminiscent of like, this is a guy who he knows that the world has kind of moved on and he should be in a different spot in his life right now. He should be retired. He shouldn't be on the force. For everything that he's done, but he loves what he's doing so much, and he's going to do it even if it costs him his relationships, what people think of him and all that kind of stuff. So I really like seeing those type of moments. And this, again, another Bruckheimer series with Top Gun and even in Bad Boys. It's like you're seeing that Mike Lowry, like, I've been doing this for so long, but I need to keep doing what I'm doing because that is who I am. And I like that we have these characters that are almost unshakable in their characters, but they're still not oblivious to the world progressing. This movie doesn't feel like it's made in a bottle. It feels like we are taking Axel and we're putting him into this world. So he's still dealing with the world around him in the modern world, but he is still true to who he is as a character. Anthony, jump on in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the biggest thing for the first one was that culture clash when he's a Detroit cop going to Beverly Hills and seeing the interesting characters from that world. And then 30 years have passed. So here he is again, going back to Beverly Hills, seeing a completely different look to them. It's funny, but I think the biggest thing for me was the nostalgia factor. Like, it just felt like a movie that was shot during the 80s. It didn't need to be bigger than what it is. It knew what it was, and it wanted to just maybe continue that story. I think that's where Mark was like, I think that works for this film. We don't need to make it serious. We don't have to change the whole look of it or the style of Beverly Hills Cop and really morph it into something it's not. Let's just continue that type of storytelling, as well as pay respects to it, because it's been 30 years. And it's funny that the last one was like horrible. Like, even Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character said he, like, the last time you were here was 94 and it wasn't a great year. So like those little inside
wasn't
jokes.
your finest hour.
Exactly.
So good.
It's nice to see it. But sometimes I also am curious, did we need it? Because the people who might have been during that 18 in the 80s or in the 90s, are they looking for a new Beverly Hills Cop, or is this just a franchise they thought, well, we'll just make something out of it because we have the rights or we have some sort of connection to Eddie Murphy and we can get him to do it again? And honestly, I enjoyed it. I just couldn't see this movie being like on the big screen, even though it's like $150 million movie. It takes place in Los Angeles, so the budget's huge, a lot of practical effects. But I just couldn't see this movie being that, wow, this is what we go watch, in the theaters. It's not that movie. Maybe at a certain point in the 80s it was, but I couldn't see that now. But overall, I had a lot of fun with it. I think the ending kind of lost me a bit.
What's really interesting about where we are with films now is that we have like this legacy sequel that's being made. There's no shortage of legacy sequels that have been made over the years, but we're seeing them pop up on streaming services. I mean, Eddie Murphy has worked with Netflix a bunch of times now, so Dolomite, You People, the Jonah Hill one, and I think Netflix is seeing, okay, the people who would have seen this in theaters in the 80s and 90s, that age demographic, where are they watching movies now? They're watching movies on Netflix. They are our primary, source for what we're looking for to, cater films to them. So I think, and then also having all of the other films on Netflix helps. So when I was looking into it, I'm like, okay, all of the other Beverly Hills Cops movies are here. So they are going to have an audience of being able to pick this up and where it left off. What I will say before I kind of get into more of my thoughts on the film, I wanted to ask you both about your thoughts on the name, because I think, Shay, you mentioned before, this felt like a movie that you could have just named this movie Axel F or Axel Foley or whatever you want, but to have the Beverly Hills Cop name on it, obviously, which is the name of the franchise, and then have a subtitle Axel F, it's almost like you're saying the name of the character twice, or the name of so you're having two titles to this movie. It's almost like conflicting. Shay, what do you think?
Well, I know that they went with Axel F because that is also the name of the theme song, that's constantly played over and over again in the franchise. But it felt like also for a while we were constantly seeing Axel F as the movie's name, and I wasn't even seeing Beverly Hills Cop attached to it until very recently that I started seeing the Beverly Hills Cop name to it. You don't have to call it Beverly Hills Cop 4 because, I mean, you're kind of acknowledging 3, which we're trying not to acknowledge. And calling it Axel F, I mean, yeah, that also can work. But I think just what we were discussing before, just even calling it Beverly Hills Cop and going with it is also fine. You have it done many times before. You had it done with Halloween in 2018 and many other franchises that have come out recently. They just kind of do it, and it's okay. People are smart enough to realize that this isn't the same film from 30 years ago. We now know this is, the new Beverly Hills Cop. Don't call it that though, but something along those lines. So yeah, it's not maybe the strongest name because it's not the strongest subtitle, but if you are paying homage to the theme song that is going to be an earworm in your head, I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. Anthony, how about you? What do you think of the name?
I think, I'm just looking at the poster right now, and both font sizes are the same size. I think they should have just kept it at Beverly Hills Cop, because I think 30 years ago it's a long time. So I don't think anyone's like looking for Beverly Hills Cop. And I think if you were to see that, you're like, but I understand what they're trying to do with the algorithm and breaking it up a bit. I like it. 4 is also, I don't like numbers. It's
people are going to feel like this isn't approachable, right? Like if people like I
gotta watch
like
the first 3 to get to this, right?
Exactly. This one kind of picks you up. Like it's going to give you everything you need to know to fill in the story. But if you've watched the first 3, you're going to get a lot more of the little nuances, a lot more of the inside jokes and things like that, because there are returning cast members other than Eddie Murphy returning. And that's where I wanted to start. I think Eddie Murphy he brings like the heat in this. He's just so fun. And I think right out of the gate, as this movie is starting, we're at a hockey game and he just goes full Axel. He just goes full Eddie Murphy and doing jokes, and he's kind of breaking down like racial stereotypes and things like that. And it's really funny. And I think that's where I'm like, you know what? I feel like that whole opening sequence feels like I would have seen this in a movie theater. And that's where I was like, this feels like this is like a really peak moment. Like you could tell that they went all out for that opening chase. It's a really fun sequence. It's really cool to see that it was actually at a Detroit Red Wings game. A lot of the times when, I know this is a really weird nitpick, but a lot of the times when we see sports games in movies, you don't really see the real team. You'll see like, oh, this is some AAA hockey team, or this is some, Pee Wee League football game that's going on. You don't actually see like the real teams happening. So it's cool when you actually get to see that. But you have a great moment that is just chase through Michigan. It's really cool to see that. And I think Eddie Murphy is just at his finest when that's happening. And then the rest of the film, I think is really good as well too. But I'm right there with both of you. I had a really good time watching this, but I think the length is what really drives the pacing of this film down. This is the longest one of the franchise so far, and it's about 15 minutes longer than the other films, which I think when we were talking after we all watched it, we were saying, yeah, this movie feels like it's about 15 minutes too long. So I feel like if they shortened it to be around the same length as the others in this film, the quadrilogy? What is it? What's quadrilogy, right? Quadrilogy.
Yeah.
Then I feel like it would have been like kind of a bit more on the mark. But it's really funny. I think Eddie Murphy is hilarious. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt and him have some great banter with one another. But I really liked Taylour Paige in this. I really liked his relationship with, Axel's relationship with his daughter. He has a really great line in the film that I kept thinking about, which is played off as a joke, but it really is an endearing moment in the movie where he's like, I've only been a father as long as you've been a daughter, right? And it was just like one of those like thinkers for a second. I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's like she's an adult, but he's also only been a dad as long as she's been around. So he's still figuring it out. Obviously, he hasn't been the best dad. He is not living in the same city as her. So there is like that strained relationship, which again, you see a lot in movies like this. And I think that comes to more of my more critiques of the film, is that because this franchise was the one that really felt like it was kicking off this genre of action and comedy, because we've seen that done so many times now, this movie doesn't feel as fresh when you're watching it, because again, you've seen it done so many times up to this point, even if it was one of the OGs that were doing it. But again, Eddie Murphy I think is fun. I think Kevin Bacon is really fun to see play more of an antagonist role. He's really fun in this. But yeah, I had a really good time with it. And I really like the score, obviously. I mean, Axel's score is iconic. Crazy Frog didn't show up in this movie, but it really is...
Lauren Balfe did.
Lauren Balfe
showed up, though.
Balfe showed up. And again, Lauren Balfe showing up, Bad Boys for Life, Bad Boys Ride or Die, Top Gun Maverick, and now Beverly Hills Cop. This guy's just Bruckheimer's boy at this point, right? He's just showing up all the time for Bruckheimer, which is great to see. But yeah, great score. I think there's a lot of great action in this. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, this feels like a movie that I would have watched on Netflix, which I feel like this is a great home for it. And this is something that I know we talk about a lot here on the show, where, I would love for every movie to go to theaters, but I think this is also an example of, we know exactly what this movie is. We know exactly what audience this is going to resonate with. And I think this time around, Netflix really ended up being the best home for it.
I wanted to talk about
I think like you said,
sequence. Sorry. No, I wanted to talk about a sequence where it almost felt like a Sicario scenario about to happen, and then
Oh my gosh,
all of a sudden,
Oh,
and I felt
yeah.
like, man, why didn't they continue with this sequence? Why wasn't there it's a firefight in the streets of Beverly Hills, and
They even dropped the Juarez line too.
yeah, and it's like you had potential to have a lot more action in this movie, and you cut it down. And it could be budget, related, but I think that even the action sequences that we did get that money could have been rearranged and put it in towards those sequences, because I thought, like, man, this is going to be really good. It's getting really, really intense. And we haven't seen Eddie Murphy in a role like this in a very long time. His last role was Candy Cane Lane. This is the Eddie Murphy we want to see. This is not the, I'm making movies so I can have some sort of I gotta pay bills type of movies, this is.
Would you say Tower Heist was his last action movie that he's done?
That was a good movie. No, was that not a good movie? Tower Heist.
Tower Heist. God,
it's still
I don't
good
remember
Eddie
it.
Murphy though.
I don't remember it.
Brett Ratner.
It's still good Eddie Murphy, because Eddie Murphy was
Of course.
He's Eddie Murphy, he has that presence. He's swearing and he's being funny, and he's also serious. He has such a wide range in his acting abilities. So yeah, I guess Tower Heist. But other than that, there were certain action sequences that you just wish got longer, but they were cut short. And the soundtrack's fantastic. The music just wow, this brings me back to a certain time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely feel that. A lot of the sequences, they really feel authentic, and they're shot on location and not behind a green screen. So when you're seeing these really cool action moments happen and they get cut a little bit short, you're kind of you kind of teased me there a bit. But again, I have to give it to Netflix, because sometimes their movies have massive budgets, but we've talked about this before. There's that Netflix effect of it doesn't look as good as it should. But this movie has that authentic feel. It feels like they really put a lot of care and effort into making it look as good as, the 80s Beverly Hills Cop, where it's shot on location, it's shot in real places. So you really get that vibe. But just like we've been saying, there's so much sorry, I'm gonna not swear. There's so much that you can kind of trim out of this film, just small moments here, or gags that might go on for a bit too long, that really can help condense that runtime and make this inevitable ending that we know we're getting to. Because by this point, we're like, hey, we know where we're going to end up. We know who the bad guy is. When are we going to get there? You're kind of just constantly waiting and waiting. When it finally happens, I don't know, it felt a little just convoluted to me. I was like, okay, maybe I missed a few things, but it kind of got a little messy, and I wish it was just a lot cleaner to end it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Paramount... Oh, sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, I wanted to say that continue with what you were saying, because I think my ending is what will wrap up this conversation.
Oh, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, honestly, all I was going to say is that it's interesting that Paramount licensed this out to Netflix. I don't know if you guys knew, but there was also a Beverly Hills Cop show that was going to be made, and it was going to be Brandon T.
With his
Jackson
son being the detective,
and
right?
it was his son, but that show didn't end up, moving forward. So they're kind of retconning it now. We're that show wasn't a thing. So it's this show, and I have a daughter.
Yeah, and here's the thing: this movie is going to go to Netflix, and I'm very curious to see, the statistics and how many people watch this in the first 2 seconds of play. But my biggest concern is, how long does it take for this movie to get lost in the Netflix world? Because it feels like something that will come out. It'll have 2 days of, popularity, maybe a day, and then after that, it'll just remove itself from the gallery that you see in front of you on Netflix. And that's the problem with it. It's just you make these movies that don't get seen, and honestly, I don't trust Netflix numbers and who sees what and whatever those statistics are, and then it gets lost. You just completely forget about it. Like The Gray Man.
Yeah,
that's
just streaming
huge
right now, right? Yeah, this is a huge movie. You have a huge movie star, and again, this movie reminded me. I'm like, man, Eddie Murphy is a goddamn movie star. He is so good at what he does. Even if and I'm not saying that in this movie, in other films where you see him phone it in more, even then, he's still so fun and charismatic to watch. And that's what I love so much about this movie. But I'm right there with you, Anthony. Where is this movie going to be at the end of the year? Are people going to remember it? Are people going to know that it's out? I mean, that just...
Is it just content? Is that what it is?
And that's
like,
just,
is this just consumption?
That is exactly the headspace that we're all in when it comes to streaming services and releasing these projects and releasing these massive franchises that people know and love. But are they, top of mind still for people? But let's get to our final. Oh,
and again, this is some of the best Eddie. No, this is just some of the best Eddie Murphy we've gotten in a long time, because he is having a good time. He's making great jokes, really good improv. You can tell that everybody on set was having a great time.
Definitely. You see that. But let's get to our final recommendations for Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. Shahbaz. I'm going to get you to start us off.
I'd say watch it. I think it's a really good time. Even if you haven't seen the original films, you can still kind of go into this one, pick up the pieces. They really spell it out for you as to what's going on. And there are some really good moments in this movie that will really make you feel happy and nostalgic of an era of film and nostalgic of an era of time that we just kind of feels like it's a bit lost to today. So go ahead, put it on. It's a long weekend coming up, July 4th. Spend it at home if you want to, if you don't want to go out and watch this.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This is a really fun summer film, very 80s nostalgia fueled, but there's some really great commentary to what else is happening in the world, and also just a very charismatic lead in Eddie Murphy. I mean, this is the film franchise that shot him to stardom and made him the movie star that he is. And I think it's a really fun time. Check it out on Netflix. You're already paying for Netflix. Watch it. You're going to have a good time with it. Anthony, take us on home.
Yeah, to watch it as well. Like Daniel said, you as the audience member have produced this movie. You should watch your own movies, and you can write in the comments what you think about it. But no, for real, it's a great nostalgic look at a franchise, because that's what it feels like. That's what I got out of it. Even though the story could be a little weird, or especially the ending and the believability of it, but Eddie Murphy is a star and he shines in it.
100%. Thank you so much for listening and watching the movie podcast review of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. If you want to check it out on Netflix, it is streaming on July 3rd. And I want to say a huge thank you to our friends at Netflix Canada for sending us the film to watch in our homes. Of course, this is the movie podcast. You could catch brand new episodes all throughout the week. We have so many brand new episodes out right now that you could check out on all podcast feeds and YouTube. Check us out on our socials at the movie podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. Join us on Discord. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Whatever you are up to this summer, and if you're going to the movies, I promise you we'll have something that will relate to it somehow. So make sure you stay tuned for all of the fun stuff that we have coming up here on the show. You do not want to miss it. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.